here I was in what I thought was a dream job, and it was gone. It was just gone.
Yeah.
And at that point, life felt hopeless to me. We're still in COVID, and for God's sake, you'll find this funny, but here I'm getting fired on a Zoom call. For God's sake. If that doesn't say something, the world's gone crazy, I don't know what was, but I lost my purpose, what seemed like my identity. None of that was true, but that's what it felt like. And it was the ultimate rejection.
Yeah.
I had poured my heart and soul into this, and they're telling me they don't want me anymore. Talk about shame, rejection. You know, I didn't feel good about myself physically as it was, and it's still COVID.
Yeah.
And so I did what I always did. I went looking for comfort, and of course, comfort for me, partially, is food. So I gained another 15 pounds. And so, you know, I got the comfort temporarily while I was eating. And, you know, it's not apples. I'm not overeating apples. Let's just be clear. And so now I'm mad at myself. You know, I'm depressed. I feel shame. I'm mortified and humiliated. I've lost my purpose. You know, it kind of made me angry. So I got all of this stuff going on. But what I'm really, really angry about is that I let myself go again.
Mm-hmm.
Here I am, close to 185 pounds, and I'm mad at myself. How could I let myself go? Okay, I had reasons and excuses, but honestly, I knew in my heart food wasn't going to solve it.
No.
Ice cream wasn't going to help. Whatever the food of choice was, it made me feel worse. And I thought, how could I give up? I've never been a quitter.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, as much as losing my job seemed like the worst day, I thought to myself, you know, I started reading on the internet, and, you know, people would call losing their job the best, worst day of their life. And I thought, oh, for God's sakes, I'm going to throw up. I'm just going to throw up. But then I thought, well, I've got time on my hands. I don't have the 73 projects that I had on the go when I was working. And I was lost. I was honestly lost. And I thought, well, why don't I find me? Why don't I take myself on as a project?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't I see if I can figure this weight dilemma? And remember, I knew it was a problem since I was about 11 years old. Because my mother told me it was a problem. I'd have a weight problem. And I did have a weight problem and all of that stuff. So I knew it was a problem. I knew I had temporarily managed it. But I also knew I had never solved it. That I was not in control all the time of my food or my hunger, of all of those things. And I thought, well, I have time. And I have a lot, and oh my God, talk about my resume with diets and losing weight and food. I've got a really jam-packed resume.
Easily a PhD.
Easily a PhD.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was even reading more. And so I got desperate. I actually felt, I'm not proud, this is embarrassing, but I felt really desperate.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, my whole life around me I can't control. And I can't control my own body, and I can't control my behavior around food. And it felt like I was eating behind my own back.
Yeah.
You know, I wake up every morning and today's the day, damn it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to start fresh. Carbs are not passing these lips. The guidelines say you should eat under 50 carbs a day. I'm eating under 20. Yep. And so I would make these promises to myself. And maybe I'd last a day or two, a week, but then I'd break the promise to myself. And I don't know about you, but it is really hard on my confidence and self-esteem when I keep breaking my own promises.
Pretty hard to hide from yourself.
It's really hard to hide from yourself. And there's these things called mirrors everywhere.
Yeah.
And if ever you're trying to hide from yourself and you look at yourself when you brush your teeth in the morning, and I can't hide.
Yep.
I can't hide that. And so one day I got sick of all these promises, but I made one more. And I said, I'm going to figure this out. And you know, if I looked around, there was many people that had weight problems and had solved it. And I wasn't interested in the people that lost 50 pounds and I'm all that in a bag of chips. No. I wanted to know about the people who had lost weight and had been able to keep it off.
Right.
And sustained it for years and decades and actually had been able to recreate their relationship with food and their weight. And I'd been through phases where I thought, I'm just going to accept and love myself the way I am. So what? I'm 50 pounds? There's more of me to love. 50 pounds overweight? There's more of me to hang on to. That only lasted for so long because deep down, I wasn't happy with myself.
Yep.
Deep down, I was disappointed in myself. And I tell you, there's nothing worse than that feeling.
No.
There's nothing worse than that feeling.
No.
And so I thought, I'm going to sort this out. I can do this. I can do this. And so I started to read. I started to do some research. And I thought, let's just try for a minute and forget everything that I know to be true or that I had taken on as being true.
Right.
Carbs are the enemy. Fats is your friend, and all of this stuff, and just suspend it for a minute, and just clear the table and start from scratch. And I thought, okay, what if my body works on scientific truths, scientific principles, that I am a person that needs food for fuel. That's basic. And then I'll burn that fuel off in my general activities. And can I get to a place where there's actually a deficit? Because I knew enough of science to know that's what I was after. And I also knew through much trial and effort, and I was on keto for 4 years. I didn't have fruit for 4 years.
Yeah.
A slice of bread, starchy vegetables. So I can be pretty committed, but what if I could go back to basics and not have these foods that I was never able to eat? Because I knew that wasn't sustainable. I knew that keto wasn't sustainable. And the doctor kept saying to me, okay, you may be managing your weight, but your cholesterol's climbing.
Yep.
You're creating other problems. I go, oh, don't worry. I've watched a podcast. I've read all the science. Yep. It'll correct itself. And it wasn't. And, you know, she'd say to me, do you think maybe it's the bacon? Like, maybe it's too much bacon. Maybe it's too much cheese. And I thought, okay, maybe it's time to stop ignoring the obvious. Go back to basics. And so one day when I was reading, you know, because I'd subscribed to different things on weight and food and stuff like that, it came from the National Health Registry, this article. And it said, and I knew this, but it jumped out at me like it was brand new information. The only reason anybody is overweight is because they consume too many calories. And I just stopped and I let that land and I went, yeah, okay, I know that. But then I went, well, wait a minute. I stopped counting calories a long time ago because like that was so 90s. Like you don't count calories anymore. You count your macros, and calories are not created equal. And I know 100 pounds of or 100 calories of an apple is different than 100 calories of potato chips. And I was so brainwashed that calories weren't the thing you should look at. But here's this scientist with more letters, more degrees than an oven behind his name, saying that the only reason you're overweight is if you eat too many calories, then you burn. And I thought, wow, okay, well, why don't I start there? Why don't I start with this basic science? And I downloaded an app and I started to keep track of the food I was eating. And I realized that I was gaining weight because I was overeating. Mm-hmm. I was eating all the things, like non-carb things and fats that I should eat, but it was more than I needed. And because it was more than I needed, I was gaining weight. And I thought, oh, even when I was learning about how to eat that way, it did tell you this is all good, but calories matter at some level. Yeah. But it was downplayed and it was in small print. So I started there, started to keep track of what I was eating. And then I thought, well, that's fine, but this feels like a diet. I want something that's sustainable. I don't want something that I'm going to gain weight, lose weight, gain weight, lose weight. I didn't want any more yo-yos. I needed something that was sustainable. And life to me is surrounded with food. It's surrounded with family. It's surrounded with occasions, celebrations. Anything has food. So I got to learn to make peace with this food. I've got to learn to make peace with most foods. And so how am I going to do that? And then it occurred to me, well, there's certain things that were very important to me in the food and drink category. Mm-hmm. And one is I liked my wine. And two is I loved pizza and pasta and whatever those foods were. So I thought, okay, why don't we do this? Why don't I list all the foods that I call deal breakers? That if I have to never have them, I will be miserable, hangry, fill in the blank. It won't sustain. Mm-hmm. And why don't I work that in? Why don't I do the reverse? Why don't I work it in before so I never feel deprived and then have to over-consume to make it up? Why don't I do that? And so I like that. Yeah. I like that a lot, but also staying within my parameters. And so I would work in wine. I would work in pizza. I would work in pasta, baked potatoes. Oh my goodness, I was having the odd dessert here and there. Yep. And my weight kept going down. And then I read another post and it talked about the importance of water. Hydration. And how if we're hydrated properly, we digest better, we eliminate better. It monitors our hunger for us. And I started introducing water to my regime. And I thought, well, let's just do it right and do it early. So I started drinking at least 2 liters of water within 5 hours of waking up because I wanted to prime my system to do it right from the get-go.
Game changer.
Game changer. What I realized was that, yes, the science was true. Also, it made... From the moment I woke up, I was focused on drinking water and getting it in within 5 hours. So what I was putting into my body, how I was fueling it and hydrating it became a priority right from the moment I woke up. Yep. So that was awesome. And what I also realized, because I told myself I didn't like water. Can you believe that? That's like saying, I don't like the smell of air. Are you kidding? You need both of them to survive. Yeah. Water doesn't even have a taste. Or I told myself, oh, I'll be peeing all the time. Or, oh, I can't possibly drink that much water. Well, it all became a bunch of malarkey.
Sure.
First off, the more I drank, the more I liked it, the more I craved it, the better everything worked. And yes, guess what? Newsflash, you pee more. And that became a goal as well because we're actually supposed to eliminate, and it helps move
Yes.
through and eliminate all the extra stuff, that extra calories, etc., waste, etc. So that became a game changer, and I thought, okay, well, I'm eating the foods I love, I'm eating them within the limits, and I'm losing weight, I'm hydrated, and the other benefit from hydration, not only does it manage all those other things, but your skin looks great.
Yes.
And you're, oh my God, it just game changer. And then I started to discover and explore through curiosity this thing called hunger. Because I don't know about you, but hunger was a driver for me.
Mm-hmm.
Hunger is a primal urge. We need to eat to survive. And I'm sure I've never truly been starving. I know that. I am in this century. But I've been hungry.
Yep.
I've been really hungry. And that urge is so primal, it's really hard to talk yourself out of it. And I can do it for so long, but eventually it'll win. And I got to thinking, well, maybe hunger's not the enemy. Maybe that is something I actually need to start listening to. And what I discovered, another game changer, is that what I would call hunger sometimes wasn't hunger, was sometimes an urge.
Right.
I just felt I just wanted something. And then I'll get back to that in a minute, but wow, that's not to fuel my body. That's either to fuel my boredom or my stress or my emotions, or maybe just for pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started to realize that I think there's only 3 reasons why we eat. One is for fuel. Second is for pleasure. And the third is to cope.
Yep.
And I thought, okay, well, I need fuel. I'll die if I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I need pleasure. But food doesn't have to be my only source of pleasure. It can be one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, maybe I can manage that. And coping, I started experimenting when I was bored or stressed, and I'd eat. And I'd go, okay, there's a little dopamine hit, this little food coma, I call it,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're eating sugar. And that would kind of buffer what was going on for me, but only for so long.
Yep.
And then the stress or the boredom or the anger or whatever would percolate back up. And then I realized that I had created this vicious cycle of habits. Stress, eat. Works, doesn't work, stress back, eat. And that cycle was making me heavier and heavier. And I thought, okay, maybe I can unwind that by actually dealing with what I was coping about and realizing that the food actually makes it worse long term. And what it does as well is it comes with a negative consequence.
Yes.
So, okay. So I started to do some work and I got some coaching. And I've been a coach for the last 20 years. I trained 20 years ago
Mm-hmm.
to be a coach. So I started to use some of the coaching techniques to help with the coping piece. Game changer.
Yes.
Game changer. Because I could actually cope effectively and manage the stress and manage the boredom and anxiety and restlessness or whatever, fill in the blank, very effectively without food and without the negative consequence of food.